All right. So, what were some of the limitations that you felt when you were restricted to a cane?
Well, um, certainly, mentally, anything that involved having to move any distance became mentally too tough for me to think about doing.
Hmm.
Obviously, it was painful, but um, you know, shopping, for instance, I really couldn't do that. I had to think in terms of leaning on a shopping cart all the time, but I really couldn't. I couldn't shop. I didn't have any problems in terms of accessibility because actually stairs for me were just as easy as a ramp or anything. I took elevators whenever I could. Like even at the JP Center for my work, it's only up one flight of stairs, but I would take the elevator
Yeah.
just because it was just too much of a job to get up and down with it when I was at the point where I needed the cane.
But
It was anywhere that I had to travel long distance. So if you had to park somewhere and walk, you know, like for instance, if we went to an event at the Metro Center
yeah,
and parked over at the parking lot, the distance
yeah.
from the parking lot to the Metro Center and then the stairs at the Metro Center and all that stuff was really quite challenging.
How do you think things would have changed if you had have been in a wheelchair instead of using a cane? I guess you pretty much just answered that actually.
Well, um, if I'd been restricted to a wheelchair, there are certain things that I would not have been able to access. But for instance, I said before that shopping became a big issue
Yeah.
because I just couldn't walk the distance for shopping. Well, in a wheelchair, of course, you could do that. So it would have enabled certain activities, but would have if I'd been disabled to that extent that that's the only way I could get around, then it would have prevented me from participating in other activities for sure.
Mm.
You just think about a wheelchair outdoors is a difficult thing to get around, even if you're just going over to someone's house to sit out in the deck.
Yeah.
Well, is their deck wheelchair accessible? I guess everything is wheelchair accessible if you work at it hard enough.
Yeah.
But again, it might be a situation where mentally you'd say, I don't think I'm going to do it just because that's too much bother or it's too much work or somebody else has to do so much to get me to be able to participate in it. So we tend to think about accessibility in terms of public buildings, government buildings and so on. Those are, in a lot of cases, it's legislated that they must be wheelchair accessible. But there are a lot of things in life that aren't government buildings and they aren't covered by laws requiring them to be accessible. And people's homes are a good example. If you've got a wheelchair ramp into your house, it's there for a reason. You know,
Mm-hmm.
houses aren't built with a wheelchair ramp. So if someone says, why don't you come over for a couple of beers, we'll watch a game. You're sitting there saying, right, but you know, you have 8 steps up to your front door. Um, you know, your your bathroom is not equipped for somebody in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
So and that stuff actually kind of went through my mind.